Hi everyone, my name is Halden Rashid, Microsoft MVP, and welcome to this Copilot Studio Foundations course. Now I'm super excited to have you here because, obviously you've clicked on this video or this course to learn about Copilot Studio, and I think it's such a nice track to be on, especially with the way that the world's moving into this agentic world. Copilot Studio is a product from Microsoft which is getting a ton of investment right now. So if you're working in a company who's investing in the Microsoft ecosystem, currently on the Microsoft ecosystem, and you're looking to either transition your career, build agents for yourself and productivity and for your team, or if you're trying to turn this into a full-time job and actually develop agents for businesses, then this course will give you the foundations and fundamentals of Copilot Studio as a product to do so. Now, I really wanted to make a course like this, a series like this much earlier, but because there's just so much investment going into this product, it's changing so quickly. Depending on when you're actually going into this course, specifically on YouTube, if you're watching it on YouTube, you might find some areas, some buttons, etc., which might not be in place or is a little bit different to the way the product looks now. And because of that, I've made a commitment to keep this course completely up to date. It's a little bit more difficult to do that on YouTube, but I have my own platform, Power Academy. Link will be in the top of the description for you to go and make an account. This course will be available on there completely free, and it will be consistently updated with the changes that Microsoft is making. I also have some other sub-modules in mind that I'd like to add to this, but this is kind of the baseline fundamentals, and then we're going to add on this as those modules come out, and that will all be on the Power Academy platform. So if you're at all interested, feel free to click the top of the link, and if you just want to do this on YouTube, then we can just get started. So this is a foundations course after all, so the first thing I would definitely like to cover is what is Copilot Studio in the first place. To understand where Copilot Studio sits, I think it's super valuable to understand it in the context of the Microsoft ecosystem. So I'm just going to run through this very quickly, and then we're going to hone in on Copilot Studio and its business value in the Microsoft ecosystem right now. So of course we've got M365 at the top, and these are the tools that you know and love. So things like Teams, SharePoint, Excel, and Outlook, you're probably using these on a day-to-day basis, and these all sit within the M365 category. Then we've got this new section of agents where we have M365 Copilot for personal productivity and also Teams, and we have Agent 365 for governance of specific agents cross-platform. So whether you have agents in N8N or Claude or using agents custom within OpenAI, this would all be governed within Agent 365 if you're on the Microsoft tenant. Then here we've got the Microsoft Power Platform where we are going to focus our attention specifically on Copilot Studio. So for anyone who doesn't know, the Microsoft Power Platform is Microsoft's suite of business applications designed in a low-code, friendly way. Some might argue that might not be the case for some of these tools, but aimed to be low-code friendly to effectively allow anyone to build applications, automate processes, analyze data, and also build external portals. Now, of course, there's something to be said about all of these different products, and they're not as simple as Microsoft might market them. And there's definitely nuances to using and building with these products. But just so you understand the kind of direction that Microsoft is moving in with the Power Platform, that is the business value. Microsoft Copilot Studio is a product that's been here for a few years and is the most recent entry in the Power Platform. It's effectively Microsoft's answer to an AI agent builder where people can go in and build custom agents from scratch and connect them to all of these different tools and applications within the M365 ecosystem. Azure, of course, as usual, sits in the foundation of everything, handling your identity management, custom development, and Microsoft Foundry, which is Microsoft's pro-code answer to building AI agents. Now that kind of gave us a high-level overview of the Microsoft ecosystem, but where does Copilot Studio sit in the Microsoft AI ecosystem? Well, I've made this cheat sheet and I don't expect you to read all of these little bits here, but the main thing that I want you to focus on is it really sits in this middle ground between M365 Copilot and Microsoft Foundry. You can see with these difficulty levels here, I've indicated how I feel business users and developers would approach these tools should they want to do any development or use these tools. You can see M365 Copilot with a difficulty of 2 stars. Effectively, this is your ChatGPT, Claude, whatever you want to call it, interface where you speak within natural language and you get answers and effectively you get responses in that regard. Of course, there's a lot more that it can do now with co-work and a lot more additions that's constantly being added to, but this is what you're seeing currently within your applications like Outlook and Excel. Then we've got Copilot Studio, and Copilot Studio effectively allows you to deploy agents into M365 Copilot, specifically custom agents. And Whilst M365 Copilot has agent building capabilities, Copilot Studio really takes that to the next level and allows you to get very detailed about the way your agents are working. There's areas to evaluate your agents, analyze your agents, and of course, more custom development options available to you. And then we've got Microsoft Foundry, which is Microsoft's full pro-code answer within the AI ecosystem, allowing you to choose custom models, kind of break any sort of limitations that you might have. And this is for full enterprise-grade AI development, which of course will be out of scope for this course. I really want to cover as well what Microsoft Copilot Studio was and what it is now. And if anyone's familiar with Power Virtual Agents, maybe some of the OGs out there, this was effectively Microsoft's chatbot builder. Now, this product evolved into Copilot Studio as we move into the agent era, where our agents aren't just talking to us, but actually doing things. And of course, it's had a few evolutions since then. But Power Virtual Agents was really limited in its capability, and I would say was more of a chatbot builder than an agent builder. To understand the differences, we're just going to really quickly go through what a chatbot is in comparison to an agent, and doing a bit of a tour on what this product kind of looked like and the limitations that it had and what Copilot Studio kind of breaks through these limitations and how it does that. So with Power Virtual Agents, what you had to do effectively is if you had a user, and let's take a use case here where they wanted to reset their password, this reset my password would effectively trigger a password reset topic. And then what you'd have to do within that specific topic is branch out very specific areas of the way that that topic would flow. So for example, if the email was valid, send this. If the email was invalid, send this. If there was no match, then send this. And as you can see, it was very rigid and not so flexible in the way that you could actually develop things. And this was before we had natural language technology within Copilot Studio in the product that it is now. You'd have to write a few trigger phrases as well, and this is still available within Copilot Studio. It's kind of the legacy way of doing things. And effectively, trigger phrases was the way that you'd guess what a user would say. So not every user is going to say, reset my password. Some user might say it in a different way. And effectively, it was your job to understand what the user is saying and add that to that list of trigger phrases. So again, very rigid, not very flexible, and the technology was quite limited in what it could do, but it was an offering and people were using it. But now we move into what an agent is in particular. And whereas a chatbot kind of had this area where we had a topic and trigger phrases, again, still available within Copilot Studio, we now have this AI amazingness layer, where an agent would understand the intent and pick an action. And of course, this is a simplification, and we're going to understand what an agent is by Anthropic's definition, who have one of the best models in the world right now. But effectively, rather than having to manually map out different areas, agents can be autonomous. They understand the intent and they pick the action that they need to do. So rather than just replying to things, they actually go and do things within your database, within tools, and they just have a lot more flexibility in the way that they are developed. Now, I want to add this with a disclaimer, right? I'm not claiming that every agent is shaped like this. Again, we are going to go look on one of the official Anthropic documents to see the definition of an agent, but everyone's definition of an agent from a company perspective I've seen is a little bit different, right? We're still not completely clear in what an agent is. But from a Copilot Studio perspective, this is the way that I would visualize an agent. You have a reasoning layer, you have a knowledge layer, and you have an orchestration layer or an action layer. So your language uses a large language model to understand an intent and reason over context. It then grounds itself within your company data and knowledge. And then it goes and actually does things, right? And this is, for me, the anatomy of an agent and the capability that Copilot Studio gives you. Now, I think this is really interesting, but if we look at the Anthropic website over here, into the definition of agent, you can see the very first line is agent can be defined in several ways. Some customers define agents as fully autonomous systems that operate independently over extended periods, using various tools to accomplish complex tasks. And it says here, others use the term to describe more prescriptive implementations that follow predefined workflows. At Anthropic, we categorize all of these variations as agentic systems, but draw an important architectural distinction between workflows and agents. Workflows are systems where LLMs and tools are orchestrated through predefined code paths, and agents, on the other hand, are systems where LLMs dynamically direct their own processes and tool usage, maintaining control over how they complete their tasks. Now, within Copilot Studio, you have access to combine both of these in one effective agent. You can have predefined workflows for something that is more deterministic, and you can have more agentic workflows for something where you need the agent to understand intent and is a little bit more undeterministic. Now, before we move on, I'm just going to lay a bit of a foundation, again, very high level in what these three things are. specifically large language models, RAG or retrieval augmented generation, and orchestration. So let's go through all three. And again, very simplified, very high level. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about this, please let me know. But I just want to give you that base before we move on to actually building stuff. So a large language model. So at its core, this is genuinely just a next word prediction engine. So the way ChatGPT works, the way Claude works, the way all of these large language models work is they will understand your input and they will effectively predict your next word. And this is how it defines sentences and can effectively speak to you in a way that is human. So it will effectively go through this very complex algorithm in understanding what the next word could be. So for example, the cat sat on the, and then it will look at all of the possibilities that it can be: mat, floor, sofa, bed, chair, all trained on past data. And it would effectively give you what the next word is going to be, and it's going to do this within iterations on iterations on iterations. And this is the premise of how all of these chatbots and large language models like OpenAI's and Anthropic's large language models actually work and operate. They really all use this prediction mechanism, all trained and ground on data. A lot of data. So I think it's really important to understand how large language models work, because I've seen more and more increasingly people putting a lot of trust into the co-pilots and agents that they speak to. And there's nothing wrong with this, I think, in some level, but there has to be a level of accountability and responsibility, because there's no magic happening here. This is all trained on data and grounded on data. The next one is RAG, or retrieval augmented generation. Now, the problem large language models can't solve on its own is having knowledge ground on your company data. Models are trained usually on the public internet, things like Reddit and LinkedIn. So it has zero idea what's in your SharePoint or your Dataverse or your policy documents or your ticket history. If you ask a large language model what your refund policy is, it will either hallucinate something that sounds just about right, or it will admit that it doesn't know and it needs data to understand what that is. Now, from a personal productivity level, that's okay, but from a business agent perspective, the last thing you want to do is build something that loses trust and erodes trust within your company. So having agents that are grounded on really good knowledge, structured knowledge, is super important to creating good agents. Now, RAG is usually done in 2 steps, and it's just one method to collecting knowledge. I should say it's not the only method to grounding on knowledge sources. Firstly, we have our knowledge base where the data lives. So this could be SharePoint, Dataverse, or any files. Then we have retrieval, right? So when a user asks something, the system goes and searches your knowledge base for chunks of text relevant to that specific question. Again, using that prediction model that we saw within LLMs. Then those chunks get injected into the LLM prompt before it answers. So the LLM sees what the user has asked and it understands the relevant documents, and now it can give you a good response. We'll go deep on knowledge sources later in the course, but for now, just hold this concept in your mind. And finally, we have orchestration. I feel that an agent that can only answer questions is just a fancy search engine. I don't think it's very valuable in some capacity. And I think anyone could build something that is grounded on data and answers questions effectively. But what separates a chatbot from an agent, in my opinion, is what it can do. And this is the orchestration layer. This effectively is the layer that decides what happens once a message comes in. So the orchestrator looks at the user intent and then looks at the tools that are available to it. It then possibly will ask a follow-up question to understand what tool that it needs to use or collect data before doing anything. But effectively, it's the layer that decides which tool is best for that job. So this is again where the agentic part really kicks in. Rather than the agent following a fixed script, it's deciding in the moment what to do, and that decision is being made by the LLM rather than you. And the good news is in Copilot Studio, the orchestrator layer is built in. Your job is to give it good knowledge and good tools, which are authenticated properly, and the orchestrator pretty much handles the rest. Now, as I'm sure you know, Copilot Studio gives you all of that capability within the product. It gives you access to the tools that make an agent an agent. It gives you a nice maker studio to connect them all together, and then capability to build custom agents within your M365 ecosystem. Now that's key, and in my opinion, what the unique value proposition of Copilot Studio is. Now I think it's important what Copilot Studio can give you, of course, but what it also can't give you. So Copilot Studio works with managed large language models. So things like the GPT class, and now with some third-party options available like Anthropic's models, you kind of just have to deal with the models that Microsoft give you for Copilot Studio. Of course, you have thousands of Power Platform and non-Power Platform related connectors and MCPs for actions all built in. If you don't know what MCPs are, don't worry, it's out of scope for this course, but yeah, it's going to be an important concept to conceptualize later on. And of course, built-in tenant-level governance, data loss prevention policies, all governed within the Power Platform admin center. Now, what Copilot Studio can't give you is custom model choice or fine-tuning, and I mean very specific fine-tuning. This is where you'd be going to the Microsoft Foundry layer, right? So you've got Copilot Studio here, but you can extend Copilot Studio agents into Microsoft Foundry. And whereas Copilot Studio has the managed models that it kind of gives you, Microsoft Foundry has any model available pretty much within the AI landscape that you can actually use. So if you'd like to use another model which is outside of the GPT class or Anthropic's models, you'd use AI Foundry, or Microsoft Foundry as they're now calling it. And I say the main difference here is pro-code observability and also tracing depth. So again, thinking about the infographic that I showed, Copilot Studio is really that middle layer, but if you really want to extend your agents and have full custom capability of those agents, then Microsoft Foundry is the place to go for that. But for a lot of use cases, Copilot Studio works. Now, I think it's going to be good to just go through what you're going to cover in this course. And by the end of this course, you will understand what a Copilot Studio agent actually is and also what Copilot Studio is, when to choose Copilot Studio versus alternatives, and that's coming next, how to build and test a custom agent from scratch, how to give your agent knowledge, how to make your agent do stuff with connector actions, agent flows, and adaptive cards, and finally, how to publish your agent so people can see all of the awesomeness that you've been doing. So let's get started. So something I wanted to cover with you is when to actually choose Copilot Studio. So we went through this in a little bit of detail in the last module, but I do want to go over this in a bit more detail because I think it's important to understand where it sits even deeper within the Microsoft ecosystem, and also when to choose it against alternatives, because of course OpenAI have their own custom capability, Anthropic have their own custom capability with Claude, so why would you even choose Copilot Studio and Microsoft as a solution in the first place? Now, let's be honest, Copilot gets clowned on quite often, and these are some of my favorite memes that I found online, and yeah, it gets a bad reputation, we all know that, right? It's not the best model on the market. If you've used Anthropic's models, if you've used OpenAI's models, you know that they are very ahead of what Copilot can give us right now, right? So it's no secret, and I'm not going to try and say this dream that Copilot is absolutely incredible and it's going to solve all your problems, because the truth is it's not. But it does have one unique value proposition to give customers who are looking to invest in this technology, and that's when it comes to AI context rather than capability. Right? Because if you're talking about capability, Claude's models are amazing. The GPT models are absolutely amazing. But when it comes to business context, Microsoft really, in my opinion, have somewhat of a monopoly in business users working on these types of products. Teams, Outlook, Excel, Word. These are world-renowned products that people are using on a day-to-day basis. SharePoint as well. And when it comes to having that context within your business, within your ecosystem, I think Copilot and Microsoft technology really wins at that. It's something and a concept that Microsoft is calling work IQ, right? And it's this shared kind of knowledge across your ecosystem, understanding your organization, understanding the way you write, understanding the way you talk, and being able to combine all of that information to give you better output. Now, the Microsoft AI spectrum. So I put 4 tools here. I know there were 3 on the last module, so I don't mean to be even more confusing. But AI Builder is a supportive tool, so I wanted to add it on here because it is an AI capability option within the Microsoft ecosystem, specifically the Power Platform. And we've got no code here on the left-hand side, all the way to a spectrum of pro code here on the right-hand side. And I don't need to go into these in more detail because we've kind of gone through these, but I want to give you a decision framework to help you choose which one to use within your business. Now, of course, I wanted to add a disclaimer here. Architecture will, of course, vary depending on your use case, so please ensure you evaluate your own use case in comparison to these that I'm going to give you to make sure that you're making the right decision. But in general, this is kind of what I've seen in terms of a pattern perspective of when to use each tool within the Microsoft ecosystem. Now, M365 Copilot. So I would recommend choosing this if all of these are true. Your users already live inside M365 Copilot, and that's where the agent should appear. So for example, you don't need to deploy these outside of M365 Copilot. The agent's job is searching and summarizing and less so acting. When it comes to actually orchestrating agents and getting it to do stuff, I'd say M365 Copilot is a little bit more limited and of course has a few less analytic features that Copilot Studio might have. Your knowledge is reachable inside M365, so SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams, public web, or graph connectors. And the reason for this, again, because the connectors that you have available to you, specifically custom connectors, are less so than they are available within Copilot Studio. And if you need it delivered as soon as possible, it's very easy to go in, and if you've ever created a custom GPT within ChatGPT or anything like that, it's very easy to kind of just put one together and you're kind of good to go. And the same goes for M365 Copilot agents. Then AI Builder. So choose AI Builder if all of these are true. You're embedding AI inside an existing Power App or Power Automate flow, but not building a standalone agent. So the way AI Builder works, for anyone that isn't familiar, is it gives you two options of custom models and also pre-built models. Custom models you train on your own data. Pre-built models are effectively already trained and do generic tasks like scanning receipts or reading invoices, and you can kind of just plug and play them within your solutions. And that's why if a task is really well defined, AI Builder could, help you. So I would take a look at the catalog available. Also, if there's no chat UI needed, so the output is just supposed to feed an app or flow. For example, if you have a Power Automate workflow working and you need some sort of AI capability, AI Builder connectors are available. They are premium and they do have credits. We'll talk about licensing later on, but it is a complex topic within AI especially. But effectively, if you don't need any sort of UI chat and it's just feeding those applications, then AI Builder can be the right one for you. Then Copilot Studio. So choose Copilot Studio when all of these are true. If your agent needs to take action, so for example, call Power Automate or hit a connector or write back to Dataverse, right? If you're not just trying to answer questions, Copilot Studio is really, really good at that. If you'd like more oversight into analytics and more tools to evaluate and improve your agent, Copilot Studio has continuous investment going into this area. What are the main ones? If you need to publish across Teams or M365 Copilot or web or different messaging channels like WhatsApp, Copilot Studio has that capability available as well. And if you don't need full control of the models your agent is using, Copilot Studio is the right call. Then Microsoft Foundry. So I would choose Microsoft Foundry if all of these are true. You need a model that isn't part of the M365 stack, like Llama or DeepSeek or a fine-tuned model. For any sort of compliance reason or anything like that, then Foundry would be the place to go. If you're in a pro dev team and you're comfortable with software development kits or SDKs and Azure infrastructure, if the scenario demands network isolation for whatever reason and the optioned Power Platform can't deliver, or if you want full control over orchestration, tools, memory, and behavior, then Foundry is the place to go. Again, you're really fine-tuning the models here. I also wanted to add a best practice here that trips a lot of people up, and it's to not build what's already there, right? So your development team one day might stitch together an AI Builder solution with Copilot Studio. For example, I've had customers and potential customers come to me and say, we want this built, right? We want an Outlook agent that does this and, can give me a summary and all of this amazing stuff. And I'm just like, hey, look, Microsoft is investing a ton into their Microsoft 365 Copilot within Outlook already. I think those features are going to exist in a few months, in a year. I would just wait, right? I wouldn't rebuild what's already there. When you invest into Microsoft technology, you're effectively investing in a company to maintain that technology for you, right? The infrastructure, the management, the updates. As soon as your dev team starts building this, you are the ones that are responsible. So I would highly recommend looking at, possible releases, going to conferences, hearing from people, Microsoft MVPs, etc., who have this context, to try and avoid as much as possible not building what's already there or what's going to come out in a few weeks. It's going to be very painful, it's going to cost you a lot of money, and avoidance is always the best policy in this case. So anyway, that wraps up this sub-module. Hopefully that gives you a little bit more context of the when to choose Copilot Studio specifically, and a bit of a best practice that I've learned from experience. So we'll go on to the next module now where we'll actually start building stuff. So see you there. Okay, so in this module, we're going to introduce the use case, what we're going to be building today, kind of the background behind it, and then we're also going to get set up. So let's get started. So here's the problem that we're solving for an agent. So we're working for a company, Contoso, and I'm sorry, okay, I used the Microsoft corporate brand name for training, but I couldn't think of anything. I wasn't very creative. Employees lose hours looking for IT support, taking away from their actual work. They complain that the ticketing system doesn't work and that support documents are hard to find. The company would like an agent that can help staff solve their problems and submit tickets when the documents aren't enough. So our agent will do 4 things, right? It will answer policy questions with citations. It knows your assigned assets and tickets. It raises tickets when you're stuck. And it's published in M365 Copilot so users can use it very easily and they don't have to worry about where it's stored. And we're going to build all of this with Copilot Studio. So let's get started with the setup. Okay, so I should preface this by saying all of the labs are included within the Power Academy platform. So if you want access to the labs, mark your lessons as complete and come back to it, go and sign up for free on the Power Academy platform to do that. If not, then you can see what I'm doing here and just follow step by step. So the first thing we need to do is create your environment if you're already licensed in Copilot Studio, right? So if you're already licensed in Copilot Studio and have a Dataverse storage, then this is the way I recommend you set up your environment. So come into make.powerapps.com, here in the top you can see, then come into the settings and come into Admin Center. Once this loads up, you want to go to Manage, Environments, and you want to go to New, and you want to create Type Sandbox. Now, if Sandbox isn't available, Type Developer is also okay, but I would recommend going to Type Sandbox because it gives you a bit more freedom in the way that you can do this. For the region, I would go for United States because then you get access to early preview features. I would select Change Default Settings here. Don't worry about the environment group. If you have access to a managed environment, select Yes, select Get New Features Early, and select Next. Now, we want to keep the language as English for our case. We want the currency to be in GBP. I don't think this matters so much. Of course, for our security group, in our case, we'll just select none because we're doing this with our own environment. And what I do is I leave Enable Dynamics 365's app as no, and then I deploy sample apps and data. And this is good because it deploys data into some of your tables so you don't have to do it yourself. Now, this is if you're already licensed, but if you're not licensed, what I do is come into Google and just type in Copilot Studio, enter, and then you just select the first link. Then once you're here, select Try for free. And what it will do is it will ask for your work or school email. To create the account, it will ask you to confirm the details, and then it'll put you in your own developer environment. And this is where you'll do your building. And now we want to create our knowledge base, and we're going to do this in SharePoint. So in your browser, type in sharepoint.com, open up SharePoint, sign in. And once you're signed in, what I'd like you to do is go to Create Site, select Team Site. You can select the standard team. We'll click Use Template. We'll give the site a name, so we're just going to call this IT Knowledge Base version 2 because I already have version 1. And then we're going to select Next. Private is fine, English is fine, and then we're going to select Create Site. It's going to ask us to start adding members, but we don't need to add anyone since we're just doing this for our use case. Select Finish. It will open up your site, go to Documents, and now it's time to upload the 5 policy PDFs to your SharePoint, right? So these are the policy documents for Contoso in our case. So I've created a drive for you with the policy documents folder, and what you can do is just go into here, and I recommend individually just coming and downloading these one by one, and you should start seeing them queue here on the top. We'll just select Allow, and you see that that's been downloaded for us. And now we'll go back to SharePoint. We'll go to Create or Upload, Files Upload. We're just going to highlight the policies, go to Open. You're going to see these are going to upload within our document section, and if we open these up, you can see we've got some test policies for each area. So that's working really well. And now the final thing is to upload your solution. Now again, I will include the zip of this in the Google Drive where your resources are, and that will be in the description. But what I'd like you to do is open up your environment, go to Solutions, go to Import Solution, and browse and select that zip file. And what this will do is it will install all of the tables you need and all of the dependencies for this use case. So please go ahead and do that. Now you know a little bit about the use case, you've got set up, so we can move on to the next section. Okay, now you're ready to go with your Copilot Studio agents. So we're going to create the baseline agent in this section using natural language. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is navigate to Copilot Studio. And if you're in your Power Apps Studio, which you probably were to import the solution, since in my opinion it's the best place to do it, you'll come into Agents, and then we'll select Create a New Agent. Click on this, and it will open copilotstudio.microsoft.com, and it will also open the environment that you were in. Now, if I go back, and for whatever reason, if you don't see agents here, come to More, and you can pin agents here. So here I've unpinned it, and now I can pin it. Now this does take a little while to load, unfortunately, so we're just going to have to be patient, wait for it to load for us, and yeah, hopefully it takes us to the right environment, and if not, we can change it in here. Once Copilot Studio has opened up, you need to make sure you're in the right environment. So I am not in this case, so I'm going to go into the Copilot Studio Masterclass environment. And then once we are in the right environment, just again, make sure in the top right, and you should be on this screen. The first thing you can do is write in natural language what you want your agent to do. Now, we're not going to be worrying so much about solution management, etc. But for example, once you start typing in here and you select enter, it will go off and build your agent. If you want this made in a particular solution, you'll go to agent settings and you can choose the solution within your solution category here. And you can see it will determine the schema name depending on that solution. But in this case, we'll leave that blank and we'll just leave it in a default solution for now. So the very first thing we're going to do is add a prompt, right? So we're going to want a half decent prompt, not too complex, not too simple, to basically describe what we want the agent to do. So we want a help desk agent for Contoso employees that answers questions about Contoso's IT policies, including password resets, VPN setup, laptop provisioning, software requests, and access requests. The agent should cite the relevant policy when it answers. When it can't answer a question from the available policies, it should offer to help the employee raise a support ticket with the IT service desk. So, simple enough prompt, gives it enough context to get started, and we're just going to select enter. And what this is going to do is go in the background and create our baseline agent, which we will then approve on. So we're just going to wait for this to finish. It doesn't usually take too long, and you can see right now it's created the agent for me. You can see it's given my agent a name, it's given it a description here, and you can see the agent model is loading, but it will also select a default model. You can see GPT-5 chat in this case. And what this does is it just gives us a really good starting point and just a baseline that we can go off. So now the agent has been provisioned, we can come into here and we can change the name. So here, rather than 1, we're just going to put version 2 and then save. It'll process that request. We can change the icon here. And you can see it's even given us some predefined instructions. So it's given us a purpose, a guideline, some skills, step-by-step instructions, error handling, interaction examples, and follow-up and closing. Now, generally, it will make decent templates with instructions. That's the way that the agent builder that we just used is prompted to do so. But there's a framework that I like to use, which might evolve over time as these agents evolve themselves to create good instructions. So we're just going to cross this out. We're going to select refresh to make sure we have the latest version. And you can see now it's refreshed. I can, customize the agent how I'd like. I can change the model as well. You can see Anthropic models. We've even got Grok models available. A few labeled as experimental, so do keep that in mind. But what I want to first do is experiment with this testing panel here on the right-hand side. So this is where effectively you can test your agent. So as you iterate on it, you have a test panel available to you that you can keep asking questions or describe what you need and start testing areas of the agent when you start adding to it. So we're just going to add a prompt and ask, hi, what can you help me with? We're going to select enter. And then it's going to take us to a screen where effectively, if we have a workflow, it will map out all of the different areas that it touches within that workflow. So for example, if we have a knowledge source here, you'll see it over here, the knowledge source it called and the reply it gave us, right? And you can see here, it's given us the reply. You can see it's given us a list of what it can help with. And if I ask it, give me the password policy and enter, you can see it's looking at its knowledge sources and it's actually gone online, you can see here, and found us the password policies. So we don't actually want that. And when we ground our knowledge source, we are going to shut off any sort of access to the internet so it can stop hallucinating and giving us something that isn't correct. So because Contoso, and I purposely picked this because Microsoft have online documentation about Contoso, it is their example company that they use within all Microsoft Learn documents. You can see it's effectively pulling fake knowledge sources from Contoso. This is our company, but there is data existing about it online, so this is what it's pulled for us. So that's a quick tour of the authoring canvas. We will go through all of these tabs and what they mean very soon. But something else I want to show you before we do that is if we go to agents here on the left-hand side, and if we scroll down, we have 2 different ways to get started other than the one that we just saw. Or a few different ways, I would say. We can create a blank agent, which will then prompt us for the name, the description, the instructions, which is a good way to start. Or we can install a managed agent, or start with an agent template. Now, agent templates are effectively Microsoft-provided starter scaffolds. You'll pick one, and it will copy the built agent into your environment, and you own it, and you can fully customize the way that agent works. So topics, knowledge, tools, etc. That's all stuff you can customize. So Microsoft publishes this template themselves, but the agent is yours to build and iterate on. Now, managed agents are a little bit different. These are ready-made agents, as you can see, and they will receive updates when they're available. So once you set them up, you don't really own the logic of it. The publisher manages the agent configurations, the updates, and generally the internal behavior, But if you're looking for a document processor or finance in M365 Copilot or something to do with store operations, this definitely could be something that you use. You're effectively offloading the capability to Microsoft, and they are going to constantly provide updates for this. At least that's what they're selling. Now, in my opinion, I do see independent service providers coming in here and adding their own managed agents as well in the future. But right now, all I can see is Microsoft agents. So that's a quick difference between agent templates and managed agents in case that causes any sort of confusion. But anyway, within this section, I just wanted you to get started and build your first baseline agent, and we've done that very quickly within a few minutes. And within the next section, we're going to cover what all of these tools and capabilities are available to us. So let's get started with that. Okay, so in this section, we're just going to go through a tour. So I'm not going to teach you how to use every section, but I'm just going to make you aware of what each section can do and what the tabs look like effectively. So quick orientation, on the left-hand side, we have the global navigation. We've got flows, we've got tools, we've got home, of course, where we see all of the agents. And if we select the three ellipses, we have solutions similar to the Power App Center, and we have areas of the Power Platform as well. Also some areas about AI integration, so Azure OpenAI, the Microsoft 365 Agents SDK, and also Azure Cognitive Service. Flows and tools are both features that are available within Copilot Studio, so within this section. They're just formulated a little bit differently. But today we're going to look in detail at the tabs within the agent itself. So in the top bar, we've got Publish, Settings, and Test. Publish, of course, will publish your agent into the channels that you'd like it to be. Settings will take you to the settings section, of course. And Test will take this tab and basically pop it in and out. So if I want to see my test or not, I have the ability to access it or not like that. So we're going to start with the Overview tab. And, this is the first thing that you see. It's quite self-explanatory, but it's basically the hub for configuring the agent. There's 5 main sections on this page. We have the details, where you add the name and the description. We have the agent model, so choosing through the managed models that Microsoft have available to you. For Anthropic models and Grok models, you are going to have to turn them on from a tenant perspective, but OpenAI models are already built in. Then instructions, so this is the system prompt. I think you have up to 8,000 characters. I could be wrong in saying that. No, we do. Up to 8,000 characters here. And for me, in my opinion, this is one of the highest level control points to make the agent do what you want it to do, right? You can tell it what to do, what not to do, and it will effectively follow these instructions every time. Then if we scroll down, we've got knowledge. So when we want to add knowledge sources, this also has its dedicated tab. Tools is actually making your agent do stuff. So going and getting data or writing to a source, for example. Triggers you can set up if you want to activate your agent when certain things happen, so making it a bit more autonomous. And agents allows you to connect your agent to other agents as well. So again, that's out of scope for this particular course. Agent-to-agent connections can be a bit more complex, but this is the area to do that. You've got topics. Again, it has its own tab, so we'll discuss that soon. And suggested prompts. So when people use the agent, what are the prompts that come up that they can get started with? So if we scroll back to the top and go to knowledge, we now have our knowledge area. And this is effectively where you ground your agent in your data rather than what the LLM was trained on. Now, if I go to add knowledge, Microsoft suggests a bunch of knowledge types from public websites to SharePoint to advanced connectors as well. So if I click onto here, you have things like Databricks, Confluence, Zendesk as well. So you have a lot of different areas where you can add knowledge sources. We're going to keep it simple and use SharePoint and Dataverse for this course, but this is the place where if you want to add anything else, you would do it here. Then we have the tools tab. So the knowledge is what the agent knows, but tools are what your agent does. So there's 5 types of tools that you can add here. If I go to add a tool, you can see we've got agent flows, which are effectively a little bit similar to Power Automate flows if you have experience there, but with generative capabilities. So they're a little bit more deterministic and predictable, but they allow you to structure different topics that your agent can respond to and all of the steps within it. Then we've got prompts. So these are reusable AI builder prompts. So these are useful for things like summarizing text or extracting data. We've got the MCP or Model Context Protocol. And this is a newer standard for plugging tools and resources into agents. And Microsoft is leaning into it very heavily, and honestly, the rest of the AI ecosystem as well. Again, we're not going to go deep into MCPs within this section, but it is available to you. Then, of course, we have our connectors here. And these are the thousands plus of Power Platform connectors that are available to you. So Outlook, Teams, SharePoint, Dataverse, Jira. It has pretty much everything that you need. And if it doesn't, then you have the REST APIs where you can create your own custom tools. So a lot of area for flexibility here. And this is what I meant when I say the orchestration layer within Copilot Studio is super, super powerful. And we're going to use this a lot as we work through the modules. Then we have the Agents tab. Now this one confuses people a lot at the first look because, we're already inside an agent. So why is there another agent tab here? But agents can call other agents, right? And this tab is where you connect them. So for example, if you wanted an agent to do something else, so you had a very particular use case and you didn't want to stack it on this agent and make this one super complicated, so you wanted to call another one, you could add it here so it could be called within your workflows. The rule of thumb from Microsoft's own guidance is when your agent has more than 30 or 40 choices of action, and you're seeing the orchestrator struggle to pick the right one depending on what the user is saying, that's a good signal to split into multiple connected agents rather than just one single agent. So again, this is more of an intermediate level topic, so we'll keep the agent very simple for foundations. And then we have topics, and topics are effectively scripted conversation flows. They run the same time whenever they're triggered, right? So if I go to one of these system ones like goodbye, you can see we have a trigger, we have a description and how this topic is going to be triggered. So it says this tool can handle queries like these: bye for now, bye now, goodbye, no thank you, and goodbye. And you can see if at any point the user says goodbye, the agent will ask if they'd like to end the conversation, and then you can see it kind of moves through this flow. So it'll either end the conversation, or if they say, no, I don't want to end the conversation, they will say, go ahead, I'm listening, right? So a deterministic workflow for a specific topic. And topics is the way that we take our agent from being very unpredictable to making a little bit more predictable as well. Again, you have your pre-built system topics here, which are all available to you. And if you click onto them, you can actually customize these. But I generally just like to keep them on unless I need to turn them off for any reason. So I don't generally delete them. System topics can't be deleted, as you can see, but you can turn them off. But custom topics here available can be deleted and turned off as well. We're going to go into topics in a bit more detail soon, so don't worry so much about this now. Of course, you can add your own topics as well from blank or with a description with Copilot, and we will do that later on in the program. And then we have activity, and this is one of the tabs within Copilot Studio which I haven't seen used so much, but every conversation your agent has produces a session record here. If you click onto this, for example, I can go through exactly what was asked, how the agent responded, and I can try and figure out kind of the issues that have happened in these areas if the agent has hallucinated for whatever reason. Now I have two different views available to me. I have the transcript and map view, and then I just have the map view. Now here I can see the specific things that were said, and here I can see what the agent done in those particular steps. Honestly, this is where you'd spend a lot of your time in the activity panel when things aren't working, and you'll send some test messages. You can see the tests that we've done earlier, and they'll still pop up here. Next, we've got the evaluation tab, and this is a newer tab for Copilot Studio. The question it solves is, how do you know if like a change you made, like a change in an instruction or a new knowledge source, or if you've changed the model, actually has improved your agent? With evaluation, you can actually get those results by creating test sets. And test sets are effectively a collection of single questions or full conversations with optional expected answers. So you build a test set, you run it, and then you get an aggregate score. And then let's say you change something, you can run the same test set again and compare. So this saves you from having to consistently test the agent in the same way. And, because they're relatively undeterministic in kind of the way that they work, this way you can get a bit more structured results, right? You use the same test set consistently, even when you make your changes. So if I go to create a test set, you can see I've got some different areas available to me. I can start by uploading some questions using a CSV file, or I can just generate a quick question set based on my agent's description, instruction, and capabilities. So if I click onto this, you can see now it's created me some test cases. I can then come into here and evaluate and do all of this good stuff and run repeated cases rather than testing them all the time manually, and then also export them to CSV so I can report on them. Again, this is going to be out of scope for this course, but I think it's important that you know this is available. Then we've got the analytics tab, and this effectively allows us to track our performance of the agent. It'll give us the total sessions, the engagement rate, the resolution rate, the escalation rate, so anything that got handed off to a human, how many people abandoned the agent, and then also a customer satisfaction score. You also get reactions, so thumbs up and thumbs down on individual messages, and this will all be available to you once you publish. Then we've got channels, and here is effectively how we can publish our agent. You can see we've got different areas available from demo websites to web apps. And if I want to deploy my agent in any sort of way, I can click onto one of these channels and then it will guide me onto how to deploy that agent. So nothing to really think about too much here. This is just the way that you can distribute your agent. Now it says here on the top we're using Microsoft Authentication, and this is by default in all Copilot Studio agents. It says to use other channels we have to change our authentication settings, and if I click onto this, you can see I can change from authenticate with Microsoft to authenticate manually or no authentication. I can also enable multi-tenant support, but this is in preview, so do keep that in mind. But for this use case, authenticating with Microsoft is going to be okay since we're maintaining everything within this tenant. And then the final thing we're going to check together is the settings. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these tabs because, I think we've seen enough with these different tabs. But I do want to just focus our attention on a few areas. And one of the main ones is orchestration, right? So by default, generative orchestration is on for agents. This means the LLM picks the right tool, the topic, the knowledge source, or the agent that it's going to use at runtime, all based on the user's intent. But Classic is very similar to Power Virtual Agents. And this means the agent matches the user input against any trigger phases on the topics, and rather than being dynamic, it just becomes a lot more structured. Now, there's no right or wrong way to do it. Sometimes classic orchestration can work, but you do lose a lot of the features that we covered and that we will cover throughout this masterclass. So you have some self-explanatory areas here in the settings as well, and you can also check these tabs for yourself. But we will come here and toggle some of these settings on and off, and we'll go through the reasons and why we're doing that. But this has been a tour of the authoring canvas. So hopefully you're a little bit more familiar of the way that this works and the way this all kind of clicks together and why the Copilot Studio interface can be so powerful. In the next section, we're going to go through agent instruction and design and testing our agent a little bit to make sure that the instructions work effectively. So let's get started with that. Okay, so for this section, we're going to go through agent instruction design and testing. So agent instructions you saw were automatically generated for us when we built our agent. And I think they get overlooked often, and some people might put a line or two lines in there, but they're effectively the agent's operating system. And without one, the agent doesn't really understand what it should do and shouldn't do. In my opinion, they're one of your highest leverage control points because everything downstream, which interacts with the user, gets filtered through the instructions block. And the way this looks is something like this. So if users have any messages, it will always check the instructions, right? This is something that's going to always happen through the interactions. It will say what it should do, what it shouldn't do, and if it fails, how it should fall back, right? If it's written correctly. For example, if something is in scope, it will tell you, and if something is out of scope, it will fall to the fallback. Now, this is an agent instruction framework that I put together through doing some research and also testing with users, and it's one that I found quite effective, but you'll find a bunch online. So whatever works for you, I think is what you should go with here. We're just highlighting the importance of instructions here. But we use a role, we use a scope. So firstly, we go through identity. So I should start with that. We go through who the agent is, right? So give it a role and give it a scope. Some people like to give the agent a persona, a name, makes it a bit more friendly and interactive, and it can improve results as well. But just understanding what the agent is, what it should be doing, and also what it should cover, right? So if there's any steps or anything, it would all go under the scope. Then we go through conduct, which is how this agent acts. So how it talks, like if I ask it to talk like a one-eyed pirate, it will absolutely do that if I put it within the behavior area. Or if I want it to act a bit more professional, it will do that too. And constraints is really important because it's what it must not do, right? Don't give me information on HR policies, or don't give me information which is sensitive, right? This is important stuff that we need to put into the agent instructions. Then reliability, right? So it's the citation rule. So if it's reflecting to any knowledge source, how should that show up within the chat? If it's formatting in an incorrect way, then we can add some sort of citation rule to make sure that within the chat it's formatted correctly. And then fallback, one of the most important points. What will the agent do when it can't help, right? So being able to determine a fallback topic is super important, and generating a response as well. Something that also helps, which isn't on here, is giving your agent examples, right? So being able to say, if someone says this, don't reply to it, and instead say this in a professional and calm manner, right? And giving it some examples to ground itself on so it can determine those relevant situations and respond accordingly. So we're actually going to go and test the agent instructions. So let's go back to Copilot Studio. Okay, so we're back in Copilot Studio now, and you can see if I scroll down, it's generated these agent instructions for me. So this isn't bad, right? It's given us a purpose, general guidelines, skills, etc. And you can see, for example, for headers, we have the hashtags, and we have the little dashes for bullet points. So just make sure the formatting is really good too. And I've got a predefined instructions prompt that I've got here. And if I control and paste, you can see the different areas. So I've given it a role, I've given it a scope, I've given it what it can't answer questions about, for example, HR topics, behavior. Now, behavior is something I'm going to change because I just want to show you how this will impact this, right? So if I save this, it says right now, be direct and professional. Contoso employees are time pressured. But imagine, right? If I come into here and say, hi, what can you help me with? And put enter, you can see it will give me a very direct and professional response as we've asked it to. But if I come into the overview and go into instructions and take this out and say, always answer questions like a one-eyed pirate that's in a rush to leave. And if I save, and if I just copy this prompt, and I always want to start a new test session if I'm, testing an updated instruction or something, and then send, you can see it started with I'm your lifeline at Contoso matey, here's what I cover. A little bit cringe, I'm not gonna lie, but just to show you the power of instructions, right? One line made that difference. And that's why instructions can be so important when you're making your Copilot Studio agent. So we are going to go back because that is going to be a nightmare for people. And we're just going to change that back to be direct and professional. So my advice would always be to stress test these instructions as much as you can, right? So go line by line or section by section, even better. Going through roles, scope, behavior, constraints, citation rules, and fallback, and start pressure testing your agent against these instructions. Now, these instructions will become more and more important as the agent develops, but I think it's a foundational element and a quick win that anyone can do regardless of technical knowledge. If you do it correctly, it can make a big difference. In this section, we are going to be covering knowledge sources and also adding knowledge sources to our Copilot Studio agent. So why knowledge sources are important? So LLMs are trained on the public internet, right? So Wikipedia, GitHub, news articles, published books, and specifically Reddit as well, very, very common. And if you don't ground your agent into knowledge sources, it will just give you answers regurgitated on the public internet, right? Of course, the LLMs have never seen your company data, your SharePoint, your Dataverse, your customer records, your internal policies, your files and documents, right? This is invisible to an ungrounded LLM. So knowledge sources allow us to take the agent and basically give it the context that it needs to be useful within the context of our business. Now we fix this issue with something called grounding. And the way grounding works is effectively you have a knowledge source, which is part of your workflow, right? So when the user has a specific question, the knowledge source is over here, where if the agent determines that that knowledge source would be useful for this specific question, it will pull from that knowledge source, find relevant chunks from it, and then add it into the agent flow so then you can get a grounded answer. So I really like this image because it showcases how this works in a bit of a peculiar way, but effectively you have this huge brain of a large language model, and grounding effectively takes this huge brain of the large language model and grounds it into your company data, which is a bit of a smaller brain, but it's effectively an anchor for the large language model rather than it going completely crazy and bringing up stuff that isn't relevant to your company. Now, there's a lot of knowledge sources available within Copilot Studio, and in this section, we are going to be adding SharePoint as a knowledge source with all of the company documents that we uploaded within it. So let's get started with that. Okay, so I'm within my Copilot Studio agent, and the first thing I'm going to do is go into knowledge. You can see I don't have any knowledge sources open. I'm just going to start a new test pane and close this so I can focus on doing this. And then we're going to add knowledge and click on SharePoint. You can see the first thing it will ask for is the URL of our SharePoint site. So if I go to sharepoint.com and sign in, of course, and if I go to the IT Knowledge Base version 2, and what I like to do is go from this question mark backwards, take the HTTPS, go back into Copilot Studio and paste and select add. And you can see we have to give it now a meaningful name. So in this case, we're just going to call it Contoso IT Policies, and then a description, right? This is important because honestly, I'm not going to lie, I'm not sure if the agent checks this, but it's always good to give knowledge sources like this all of the metadata as possible to try and keep your flows and agents as consistent as possible. And also from a developer perspective, they would understand why you've added this as a knowledge source. So we've added a description, just saying Contoso IT policies and procedures, and then some examples of that, and then we're just going to add to agent. Now this has been added, once you see the status is ready, what I'd like you to do is select the ellipsis, go to official source, and select yes. And it will give you this prompt to say it's going to update the agent instructions with a specific header, and it's going to basically say, once it's given an official source within a chat, it will say based on official sources. I recommend adding this. Again, it's in preview, so please go and take a look at your instructions to make sure it's been added properly. But I recommend just giving your users that oversight that this is an official knowledge source. So we'll select update. It will save. And again, we're just adding that extra layer of authority so it can trust this knowledge source when it's running those undeterministic workflows. Now, if I run a test on this agent and just say, for example, within this knowledge base, if I go into my documents, I've got some of these policies. So let's go through the password reset policy. And if I ask, what is the password reset policy? Which honestly is the way that someone might ask it. And if I select send, you can see it's retrieved it from the knowledge source. But what it's actually given me, if I look here, is it's referenced something from the internet, right? And this isn't the knowledge source that we want in particular. We want the SharePoint knowledge source, right? But this is a footnote rather than the official knowledge source that it's mapped. So what it's given me effectively is not correct. And the way that we fix this is we go into the settings in the top right-hand corner over here, and we want to scroll down, and here within knowledge, we do not want to allow ungrounded responses, and then we also don't want to allow information from the web. And what this will do is it will limit and constrain the agent to the knowledge that we give it, because we don't want it going online and trying to find other companies' policies and bringing it to our company. That will cause big issues. This way you protect and safeguard it with the knowledge that you give the agent. So if I select save and I go into this cross, which will bring me back here, and I type what is the password reset policy now, I'm just going to start a new test session to make sure, ask the same question, enter. Now you can see if I still run this, it hasn't worked. And honestly, I did expect it to work. But if I select edit knowledge sources here, I can see exactly what it's done. So it's ran this conversational boosting topic, which I believe is a system topic. It's ran a trigger on unknown intent, and it's created a generative answer. Now what I want to do is turn off this topic because again, we don't want any of these generative capabilities. We want it ground specifically on the knowledge source. So if I go to system, conversational boosting and turn that off, you can see that's been switched off. And let's give this one more shot. And something I've done as well, just for the purposes of testing, is when I go into topics and then system topics, I disabled the fallback for now because it was causing some issues with not actually giving me the data, even though it can find it. So if you're having issues, feel free to turn this off and then come back to it when you have some more time to debug. But if I was to question now, what's the password reset policy, and send, you can see I'll search the knowledge sources, and you can see it's popped up the password reset policy with the reference, and if I click onto this, I'll be taken to the SharePoint site. So it's giving me that reference, it's giving me the steps, and everything seems to be working. Okay, so we've just gone through how to ground with SharePoint data, but now I want to show you how you can ground with Dataverse data as well. So when you imported the solution, you should have 3 Dataverse tables available to you. Contact is one that's already existing within your system, so this wouldn't come with it. You'd have to add this to your solution. So to do that, you'll go to add existing table, and then you'll look for contact and add it. But you should have 2 custom tables, IT asset inventories and support tickets. I'm just going to remove contact because it's not something that we're going to be actively using within this solution. We have lookups to it, of course, but it's not something that you would have imported. It's something that would already be existing. But what we're going to ground on is the IT asset inventories table. So if I open this up, within your labs, there'll be some test data that you can get in, but I have a simple table here. And if you don't have access to the labs, then just feel free to write all of this data yourself. Make sure assigned to is to you, and you should add yourself in the contact table to do that. But you can see you have multiple columns here, and you can see all of the assets assigned to the people. In this case, all of them are assigned to me. Now what we want is if people want to know what assets are assigned to them, they should be able to ask through the agent. So the way that we would do this is we'll add this Dataverse table within our agent knowledge. So when we go back to Copilot Studio, and then we go into knowledge, we'll go to add knowledge, and then we go to Dataverse. And then from here, we'll look for our IT assets inventories table, click, and then click add to agent. Once this has been added in, you can see the status is unknown, so I would always just refresh until this is ready before doing any testing. It seems to be establishing that connection. but it shouldn't take long until it's ready. And while that's getting ready, something I want to introduce you to is a few more options within the Dataverse category. If I go to Edit, and then I can mark this as an official source, but I can also go through synonyms. And here, for all of the different columns within my table, I can add synonyms that people would refer to those specific columns. So for example, if some people would refer to an asset tag as just a tag, I can come into here and add that synonym, select Adds, and then enter here. And you can see now what that's going to do is if anyone uses a different way to say asset tag, it's actually going to register that and refer to this column within the agent. So it's, accounting for those different areas within your organizational language. You can also add descriptions which will help, and you can just save. And now that's been connected as a knowledge source, what I can do is test it within the pane. So I can type in show me all the assets assigned to, and then I'll put my name and put enter. And you can see it will review both sources and find the one that appeals to my question the most. And you can see here, it's giving me a list of all of the current IT assets which have been previously or currently assigned to me. It gives me the laptops, the phones, the monitors, and the software licenses. It says most items are active and assigned, with some marked as in repair, in stock, lost, or expired. And it also gives me the reference to the Dataverse table. Now, this is really important because this is where security roles within Dataverse will come into action. So if I wasn't enabled to see the data within Dataverse using security roles, this wouldn't pop up for me. When I log in this agent for the first time, it will authenticate my Dataverse connection to ensure that the data it's giving me, I'm actually authenticated to see. So Dataverse security roles really do come into practice here. But because I do have the security role to see my own assets, it's available to me and I can see it within the chat. So that's just a bit of a point regarding Dataverse data. Security roles really do drive what you're seeing within the chat here. So if you're worried about the wrong data getting out, make sure your security roles are tight and created and enforced and constantly updated as well. So that's adding Dataverse as a knowledge source. Okay, so we're going to be covering topics now, and topics is a fundamental concept within Copilot Studio, and it effectively takes it from having an unpredictable path to having a more predictable path within the agents that you're building, and the way that they actually speak and interact with your tools and also the users. So what is a topic? So a topic, as I said, is a scripted conversation flow the agent runs the same way every time, right? And a topic, and the anatomy of a topic basically looks like this. You'll have a trigger in the top, and you can define the trigger in multiple ways. It can be from a description, so you can just describe how it will be triggered, and then effectively the agent will decide if that topic should be triggered in that moment. And then you'll get different nodes as well that build on that topic. And nodes effectively are what happens after the trigger is set. What are the different points of action that are going to happen, right? So sending a message, maybe producing an adaptive card. If you don't know anything about adaptive cards, we'll cover that in the next section. But the nodes are effectively the different steps that come after the trigger. So when should you use a topic? So firstly, when you have predictable steps. So you don't have to effectively, as you saw with the topic trigger, the generative topic trigger in that case, you don't have to exactly determine when this is always going to be run. It's a generative capability in the sense of the agent will decide when that topic is the most suitable. But the steps after it, for example, if you wanted to say a specific message or you want to collect specific data, which moves on to our second point. If you want to collect any specific data within the workflow, then using a topic is a really good way to structure that and make sure that all of that data is being collected. Then branching logic, right? So if you have any if statements that have to move from one branch to another, depending on what a user puts, a topic is a really good way to do that, keeping the conversation flow a little bit more deterministic as well. And then compliance and control. So just having a little bit more control in the way that your agents are flowing. And if you have any compliance requirements to have safeguarding around the way the agents can actually act and work within the organization, which a lot of companies do have more now, a topic can be a good way to safeguard against that. A good tip here is you can still have generative elements within a topic. So if you want to summarize a description or anything like that, you can still have those things accessible to you when you use a topic, right? So just because you're getting a little bit more deterministic with the way that the conversation flows, it doesn't mean you can't have elements in there which are generative. So in this case, as I said, summarizing a description is something that the AI model can handle and is not something that needs to be exactly written because each description would be different depending on what the topic, depending on what the situation and circumstance is. So right now we want to create a topic to help us support a conversation path if the user cannot solve their query using the agent. They will raise a support ticket and that will go into Dataverse. So the first thing we will do is navigate to the topics tab here. We'll go to add a topic and then we'll go from blank. We are now in the topic building canvas and you can see here the first thing that comes up is the trigger. What we'd like to do is first give this a name though. So we're going to click up here and type in support ticket escalation. I think that's how you spell it. And then here you can see that we have different options for the trigger. If I click on the change trigger button, you can see I have different options available to me. So if a specific message is received, if a custom client event occurs, if it's invoked, if it's redirected to. So you have a lot of options for the way that topics are triggered. But a lot of use cases just satisfies when the agent chooses, which is why it's the default, right? Of course, it's a little bit undeterministic of when the agent is actually going to reach for this topic. You can't really define it, but if you really need to define a trigger, you have these different options available to you, which can help determine the flow of a conversation if you have a very specific topic. But in this case, I'm just going to copy the description that I've already written here and saying that this topic creates a new IT support ticket when the user can't resolve their issue through the knowledge base, or when they explicitly ask the help desk team for help. I've added a few points here, but this should effectively trigger this topic if the user wants escalation. So now I've got this flow starting here with the top. So now I've got the flow starting here with the trigger. I can just save. And now what I want to do is start adding my nodes, right? The first thing we're going to do is add an opening message node. So we're going to click here. We're going to do send a message. So once the topic is triggered, we want the agent to say something. And once we've clicked that, we can just paste the message here. Sorry to hear you're having the issue. I'll help you raise a ticket with the IT help desk team. I can make this bold and click out of here. And now if I save this topic and I pull out the test pane, make a new chat, and I say, I want to escalate a request to the support team, and I enter that, you can see that it's automatically triggered the support ticket escalation topic. And it's also given us the opening node. So it's running that flow, it's determined that that's what I want to do, and it's now running the steps of that topic. So I'm going to close this, and now I can continue to fill this out. I have all of these different actions available to me if I want the agent to ask a question, asking a question with an adaptive card, which is what we'll cover next, conditions, variable management, topic management, adding different tools as well, which we'll also do in the next section, adding a specific agent, and we also have more advanced capabilities here available. So let's discuss what adaptive cards are and how it can support this use case. So this section covers adaptive cards and how they are useful within the context of Copilot Studio. So what do adaptive cards actually do? So adaptive cards have two specific jobs. It's to show and to collect information. You can see here with the blue outline, adaptive cards displays rich content, right? So if we go into Copilot Studio and we have a chat with an agent, it is very text-based, right? You write something, it writes something back, and there might be some sort of dynamic content in there, but it's very limited. Adaptive cards allow us to extend that and display richer content, which can satisfy the user experience a little bit better. So in this case, you can see we've created an adaptive card. We need a few more details, and then it collects your name. And then it even gives you a submit button. You've got two different things happening here. You've got the showing, and then you've also got the collecting. 3 things to know about adaptive cards. They're written in JSON. So this is an open standard with the full schema, samples, and live designer all at adaptivecards.io. And I thought I'd open this website up just to show you how they look. It says to visit the hub here, so we're just going to click on this redirect link. adaptivecards.microsoft.com, and you can see here we've got all the references, we've got how to create them, we've got different designs, best practices, and a lot of resources to create very good and working adaptive cards. So I'd highly recommend taking a look at these websites if you're looking to build beautiful looking adaptive cards for your users. The second point, inputs become variables. So each input becomes a variable on your topic ready to use in the next step or pass to a flow or a child agent or anything that kind of builds off that. And the best way to describe this is if I go back, you can see here, right? You've got your name as an area to collect data from that person. And you can see here in the bottom that that's being stored in a variable. So for example, once you have their name and for whatever reason you want to use their name in the conversation, or you want to use that name to look up some data or anything along those lines, you will now have that available to you in a variable that you can use throughout the flow and pass it to other flows as well. So really powerful in that sense. Adaptive cards are like variable machines. They every input leads to a variable. And the final point is one JSON. So the same card renders natively in Teams, Web Chat, M365 Copilot, and Outlook. So you're getting the same experience across these different tools. I had another slide just speaking about how each input does become a variable, and this kind of just visualizes it a little bit better, right? So you've got two different boxes. So you've got three different actions here: collecting data, a priority, and a description of a specific ticket. And you can see how this outputs into three different variables as well: ticket priority, ticket description, and action submit ID. All three working in conjunction. Now within Copilot Studio, we are in our support ticket escalation topic, and we are going to get an adaptive card to collect the details of that person's support request, so then we can send it to Dataverse in a structured way. So the very first thing that we want to do is add an adaptive card node. So we're going to add the node here, and we're going to select Ask with Adaptive Card. You can see immediately this pops up, and this will display the adaptive card once we've actually configured it, but we're going to select the ellipsis and then Properties. Then from here, we're going to select Edit Adaptive Card, and you can see now we are introduced to the Adaptive Card Designer. Now from here, you have a lot of different points that you can use. You can see you've got your card structure here, but effectively everything is just written in this JSON. As you can see, if I add things like input date or anything like that, you can see it will add to the JSON here below. So I can use this adaptive card designer here and also click on things and kind of craft the way that I want this to work. But I always do recommend, if you're comfortable with JSON, just to write this in JSON and refer to the schema within the websites that I listed to get the output that you want. Now, I'm not going to lie to you, Claude and ChatGPT, they can write JSON really, really well if you ground them on the Microsoft information and those websites that I showed you. And what I've got is some predefined JSON, if I just copy and paste, to give us this lovely support ticket. And you can see here, we've got the priority, we've got the description, and we've got submit ticket, which is all of the information that we need to submit these tickets into Dataverse. So once we've defined the way we want this adaptive card to work, we can select save here in the top right hand side. It will save that for us, and then we can close. And then we'll see a preview of the adaptive card working here. And now what we're going to do is give this a test. So we're going to save the topic. We're going to pop out a test here. We're going to make a new test session. We're going to say, I want to escalate. Enter. I really need to learn how to spell escalate as well. But you can see we get the message, and then we get the adaptive card that pops up. And if I put my details in here and submit ticket, nothing will happen. It will say the escalation request has been successful, but in reality, nothing has happened because that's where the topic ends. So that's where we get onto the next section and we actually write that data into Dataverse using a tool. So what are tools within Copilot Studio? Well, this is where your agent goes from answering to actually doing things. And as I mentioned there, tools move us from conversation, so the agent talking, asking, listening, and collecting data, to actually doing stuff. So it does, it writes, it calls, it reads. That's what we're moving to with tools here. We're effectively activating the orchestration layer here, and specifically within that action, right? So now we're actually taking that data and pushing that into Dataverse, so something is happening which is tangible in the real world. What we're going to build today with the tools is someone wants to create a support ticket, right? So that topic that we just created is going to run through that flow, and then it's going to write that data into the Dataverse support ticket table. And then if that user wants to read that data, it can be sent back to Copilot Studio any way that they'd like. If we just very quickly go into our Power Apps solution and open up the support ticket table, you can see I've already got a couple entries in here. So I'm just going to press edit, and then I'm just going to delete these entries so I have a fresh table. But you can see in this case, we've got a ticket title, a description, assigned to, priority, and also the requester. So these are the different fields that we need filled out. So description and priority, that's going to come from the user. We're collecting that using the adaptive card, so we can put some green ticks on that. Assigned to is nothing that we have to worry about right now because this is going to be something that is picked up by the support team, so we're going to hide that. What we need to fill out is the ticket title and also a lookup to the requester, right? So the person who's requesting the ticket would need to be populated here, and this is a lookup to the contact table. So let's start by tackling the ticket title first. So how can we automatically generate title from the description? Well, we'll go back to Copilot Studio. We'll scroll down, select add, we'll scroll down a bit more, and we're going to use something called new prompt. And this will allow us to create an in AI Builder using the default model. So if we click on this, make the name generate ticket title. I'm going to write the instructions like this. So generate a professional ticket below. I've got some rules here that I've written out. And for the issue dynamic output here, and the way that we can do that is with a /. The input will be text. We're going to make the name description, and we can add some sample data so we can test the model response. So we're just going to type in my VPN on my laptop is uninstalled, and I can't reinstall it. We're going to close, and you can see this is a dynamic element because I can click on it and then edit it. So if I save, and you can see a prompt with this name already exists, so I'm just going to put version 2, save again. And if you save, it's actually going to close it. So we're just going to open it back up, and then we're going to select test. And then what the test is going to do is it's going to run a response based on the sample data that we've given it here. So you can see VPN uninstalled on laptop and cannot be reinstalled. That sounds good enough to me to a title, so we can just close out of this. Now it's asking, what is the description that I'm generating this prompt from, right? And the description will be the ticket description that is the output of this adaptive card. And we're using variables to do this. So if I click onto here, select the 3 ellipses, and select ticket description, you can see that they will now be generated based on this. Now we want to store the output of this prompt, so the ticket title, in a new variable. So we'll press select a variable here, create a new variable. You can see now it's given us a name. We're going to click on here, and we're going to call this ticket title. You can see that's changed. We'll come back, and then we'll just save this. Okay, so now that you're actually saving your data with the adaptive card and generating the title, we actually want to save that data in Dataverse as a support ticket. So what we're going to do is scroll down. We're going to add, and then we're going to add tool. We're going to go to connector, and then we are going to run add a new row, and you can see Dataverse is the first one that pops up. We'll click on this. It will try and authenticate in a connection. Just press submit. And then once the connection has authenticated, you'll see this pop up here in the bottom. So now we want to actually point this to the table that we want to save the data at. So we're going to click on this. If we click on inputs, you can see it's going to ask us to select our environment. We're just going to put current. Or in this case, we can just put Copilot Studio Masterclass to keep things simple. Choose the table name. So this is going to be support tickets. And you can see now the columns have loaded from that specific table. So I've got a few areas to populate here. One of them being description, and I can populate that from the description that's collected here. So I can select the ellipsis, ticket description, and click. Ticket title, again, is relatively straightforward. So if we scroll down, we've got ticket title here, and that will be the output of this prompt. So if we click here, ticket title, and that will populate. And the final one is priority. Now, priority is a little bit more tricky because we're storing them as strings from the adaptive card, but in Dataverse, they're stored as numbers instead. So if you're familiar with Dataverse tables, if I come into the priority column and I scroll down, I can see the different labels and also the value. So Dataverse is storing them as the value, but we're seeing the labels, right? And this creates a bit of a problem because if we're sending labels to Dataverse, it's not actually going to be able to read it. So the way that we fix this is we create a new variable, and then we have a mapping formula to take the string and map it to the choice value within Dataverse. So if we cross out of here, click this, and the first thing I want you to do is create a new variable just under here. Click on this node, scroll down, set variable value, click on select the variable, create a new variable, click on here, and we're just going to call this priority mapping. That will change for us. And for the value, we will then use a PowerFX formula and a switch statement within it to set the label that's selected here in the priority to map to these individual choice values. So low will be this, medium will be this, high will be this, etc. So we're going to click to value, select the variable, formula, and we're just going to type this out. So if I just go full screen here, we're going to type in switch topic dot ticket priority, which is where the adaptive card is taking it. And then we'll write our switch value. And then we'll write our switch statement by saying low will equal to this. We'll add another comma. We'll say medium will equal to this. We're going to say high to this. And then we're going to say critical to this. And then if none of those are found, we can just set the default result to low. And then that will give us the switch statement that we need. Now, obviously, we want to make this look a little bit better. So there we are. I just pasted this in, something I've written in my notes, and then we can select insert. And this is the power of formula mapping because now we have a PowerFX formula setting this variable value. And now what we can do, if we scroll down to Dataverse, we go to inputs, and then we go to priority, we can select the ellipsis, and we can select priority mapping to map here. Click out of this, and then we'll save. It's mentioned the topic has one error. I am not sure what it's screaming about. And I've just found the issue of why it's actually yelling at us, and it's because if I go to inputs, and I go to ticket title, I've actually selected the record. So this is a no-go. If I come back into here and type in ticket title, you can see I have ticket title.txt, and that's the one that we actually want, and then that should calm it down. So we're going to save this now. Okay, so now I want you to test this end to end. So we're going to go to test, we're going to start a new session, and then we're just going to say, I want to escalate the topic. enter, and you should see it run this topic now. And you can see it gives us the message. It asks us to raise a support ticket. We say high priority. We can just say my laptop, or you can say I spilt coffee on my laptop and need another one. Submit ticket. Now nothing will happen because we haven't configured anything to say, this has come through or anything like that. It will ask us to authenticate here, and the generative AI might take the reins and actually reply even though we haven't actually configured something within the ticket. You can see it's working its way through the tools. It says the request has been created successfully, and if I go into Power Apps, click out of this panel and refresh, we can see that the topic has created a record here. Generated a title, we've got the description, the priority, but you can see we've left the requester blank. And now we want to populate the requester, so I want to show you how you can do that within the topic, since it's a little bit complex as it's a lookup table, right? So it's a little bit different to the way that we've actually just filled out these free text fields. So we're coming back to our topic. We're just going to close this test pane. We're going to scroll down, and just before we create the support ticket, we want to do a lookup into the contact table, since that's where our users live, right? So the way that we do that is we select add, we'll go to add a tool, we'll go to connector, and then we'll go to list rows. List rows from a selected environment, submit. And what this action will allow us to do is query the contact table, compare it to the email of the person that's filling this out, and then populate that field. So we're going to choose the environment. We're just going to select the masterclass one. We want to query the contact table, so we will do that. And then we want to find filter rows and filter only to the logged in contact using the user email function. So the way that we do that is we'll go to filter rows over here. We'll select the three ellipses. We'll go to formula. We'll open this up. And what we want to do is type in the column of the email address within the contact table. So we're going to open this up and do email address 1, which is the logical name. And if we go into our contact table, and if we go into email, edit column, advanced options, you can see email address 1 is the logical name. And then we want to put equals, apostrophe, and then we're going to use the and function, system dot user dot email. And this is a function that we can use specifically within Copilot Studio to get the user's email. So this is going to be dynamic depending on who's filling out this form. Then we're going to go and we're just going to have an apostrophe within the speech marks as well. And then we're going to insert. And now you can see in the filter rows, we have a query working for us here. When this is done, rename the output variable to user contact GUID, right? Because now this is going to give us the unique identifier of that specific contact. So user contact GUID. And then after the list rows, we want to set another variable management, set a variable value, and we want to turn this record into a string. So we're going to create a new variable, going to click on this, we're going to call this user contact GUID string, and then for the value, click on the ellipsis, go to formula, open this up, and we're going to type in first topic dot user contact GUID dot value dot contact ID. Now the issue with this is value is capped, so we're just going to make that small, and you can see that will be working. And what we're saying is take the record that you found, so the user contact GUID, give us the value, and then find the contact ID within that and turn it into a string. We're going to insert, and then now if we scroll down, what we want to do is add the user contact GUID that we've got here into the requester column. So we're going to go to inputs, requester, here. We're going to select the ellipsis again, go to formula because it expects it in a bit of a weird way. And within the formula, we will type this / contacts, plural, open this up, have an and, topic, dot. We want to make sure we get the right one here. No, we want user contact GUID string, and we will close that off and insert, right? So this is the formula we are using. Insert, and then we're going to save this. And then as the last step, what we're going to do is just add a confirmation message that the ticket has been created. So we're going to go send a message. So first we want to change the output name of the support ticket action to something a little bit more readable. So we're just going to call this created support ticket, enter, click out, and then we add the message after that. So we're going to add a node, send a message, and then from here we're going to select the variable. We're going to go to custom, and what we're looking for is the created support ticket and specifically the ticket number. And the reason for this is we're going to add a message saying support ticket created successfully. Here is your ticket number. And if we select the variable, come into here, created support ticket, dot, add a dot like that. And then right now we're looking for ticket number. So the column name, the schema name will be new ticket number. And if I click on this, you can see that now this is populated here. And the reason it's this is because if we come into our support tickets and edit column and go into our ticket number and scroll down, advanced options, you can see this is the schema name. So happy with this, we've got the end-to-end flow. We're gonna save and we're gonna give this a final test. We're gonna select test, we're gonna go to new test session, and then we're gonna say escalate a support ticket, please. Enter. It should run this topic. You can see it's running. We're gonna make this critical, coffee, okay, we'll do orange juice. Spilt on expensive laptop, what a nightmare. Submit the ticket. It's gonna ask us to authenticate, we will allow. You can see it's processing for us. You can see the support ticket is created successfully and it's given us our ticket number. And if I go back into my support ticket table and refresh, you can see that that's been done and the requester has also been populated. So we've got our end-to-end flow working. So we're in a position where we're happy with our agent and we are ready to publish it to our channels. So this is a very simple step, but one I wanted to create the video on because I think it's important within your flow to know how to do this so you can actually test and experiment with this agent once it's out there. So let's say we're happy with this. We're going to navigate to channels. And let's say, for example, I want this deployed in my M365 Copilot environment. What I would do is come into Microsoft Channels, click on here. What I want to do is ensure that this tick box is on, make agent available in M365 Copilot, and select add channel. You'll see you'll be adding channel here in the top. We'll force the newest version and we will publish. This might take a few minutes, so just be patient while your agent publishes in the background. And then once this is done, you'll get a confirmation message here. So we'll click off this and you can see the publish agent status is here. And if we click back on this, you can see sometimes this tick box turns off, which is a little bit frustrating, but just turn that back on and then save. It'll save the changes. And what I want you to do is go into availability options. And then you have two options here, right? Show to my teammates and shared users or show to everyone in my organization. So in this case, we can just show to everyone in the org, submit to org catalog. Yes. You can see the request is completed successfully. You can see it's waiting for approval now. So you might have a question of where this is actually going. So if I go to my M365 Admin Center, and once I'm in my M365 Admin Center, I want to go to Agents, Overview. And because I'm an admin within my organization, I have the ability to accept or decline this agent. So I can go to Manage Requests here. And let's say hypothetically, this support agent here is pending review. This is the one that I want to publish. Publish to store. I can say who I want it published to and who I want to be able to install the agent. So we're just going to put all users. This says who will have this pre-installed. So in this case, we're just going to select none. Next. We can apply policy templates here as well. We're just going to add the default and then select next. It can ask us to review permissions, but it's fine. And then now review and finish and then publish. Once this has been accepted as an admin, I'll select done. And if I open up M365 Copilot within my tenant and I come onto here, and I go to all agents, what I should eventually see is the Contoso IT support agent pop up in the store for me here. If I type it in, you can see it pops up. And now users can add this to their environments and get the support when they need it. So this is how you publish an agent with an M365 Copilot. Okay, so we've just covered the Copilot Studio Foundations course. So if you're watching this on YouTube or even on the Power Academy platform, I just want to say a huge thank you for staying tuned until the end of the video. Hopefully you got some value out of it, and if you did, please share it with someone who would find this valuable. This is really the direction that the Microsoft ecosystem is moving in, and I think it's skills that we're all going to have to learn one way or another. I just want to say for the people watching this on YouTube, if you are interested in having access to the Power Academy platform, this course is available there, completely free. And on YouTube, this course won't be as maintained as it is on the Power Academy platform. So the link, again, is going to be at the top of the description. And if you work in a company and your team could use support like this, or training and workshops and hands-on enablement, in this sense, to go maybe the next level with Copilot Studio into a more intermediate role with child agents and MCPs, then I'll add a second link in the description where you can use to contact us, book a call, have a conversation, and see if we can help you here at Power Academy. If not, I hope you found this valuable again, and a huge thank you for your time and tuning into this video.